Tonight, a major climate signal is strengthening in the Pacific. NOAA now says El Nino has better than a 90% chance of becoming very strong this fall and winter. That does not forecast one specific storm or one guaranteed winter outcome. But it does change the odds that forecasters, emergency managers, and communities are watching. In this report, we break down the new NOAA outlook, the Atlantic versus Pacific hurricane picture, and what the global seasonal forecasts actually say.
The new signal comes from NOAA's August 13th discussion from the Climate Prediction Center. The agency's formal status remains an El Nino advisory, but the language has become more consequential. NOAA says El Nino is strengthening, with a greater than 90% chance of a very strong event during the Northern Hemisphere fall and winter of 2026 into 2027. For the October through December season, the agency places the chance of reaching its stated historic strength threshold at 69%. That is an outlook about the evolving Pacific climate system. It is not a forecast that a particular city will flood, that a particular hurricane will form, or that any household should treat a seasonal probability as a certainty. But it is important because El Nino is one of the large-scale patterns that can influence the atmosphere far beyond the equatorial Pacific. NOAA's discussion says sea surface temperature anomalies in the eastern equatorial Pacific exceeded 2 degrees Celsius. It also describes changes beneath the surface and in winds and rainfall patterns that point to a coupled ocean and atmosphere response. That coupling matters. Forecasters do not define El Nino from one warm patch of water alone. They look for a system-wide change in the tropical Pacific. El Nino is not simply warm water. It is the warm phase of the El Nino Southern Oscillation, often shortened to ENSO. NOAA explains that ENSO alters where the tropical Pacific releases heat into the atmosphere. That can shift atmospheric circulation, change the jet stream, and affect the chances of certain temperature and rainfall patterns in different regions. The key word is chances. Every El Nino has its own timing, strength, and interaction with other climate drivers. NOAA says the pattern can influence global weather, agriculture, wildfires, and marine fisheries, but it does not produce the same outcome everywhere. Within the same region, a seasonal signal can be expressed differently from one event to another. That is why responsible forecasting uses probability language. A map showing a higher chance of wetter than normal or warmer than normal conditions is not a promise. It is a comparison against local climate averages. A location can still experience dry weeks inside a wetter seasonal outlook. A region with an increased chance of warmth can still see cold spells. And severe weather can occur even when ENSO is neutral. NOAA's newer Relative Oceanic Niño Index, known as RONI, is part of how forecasters evaluate the evolving event. NOAA says the index is designed to account for broader tropical ocean warming while focusing on the Pacific signal and the atmospheric response that matters for ENSO. NOAA's central forecast is about likelihood, not certainty. The agency says the climate system has moved into a strengthening El Nino phase, and that the chance of a very strong event is high by the fall and winter period. The October to December probability in the August discussion is 69% for reaching the stated historic threshold. That number is significant, but it is still a probability, not a declaration that the threshold has already been reached. The forecast also has a time dimension. El Nino effects are often most pronounced in the Northern Hemisphere winter. That means the most useful question is not, what will happen everywhere? It is, what official forecast applies to my place for the time period that matters? National outlooks are broad guidance. Local watches, warnings, and short-term forecasts are the products that describe immediate hazards. This distinction helps prevent two opposite mistakes. One is complacency, assuming a quieter seasonal outlook means there is no local risk. The other is overstatement, treating a seasonal map or probability as a guaranteed disaster. Both can weaken public understanding. One clear example is the Atlantic hurricane season. On August 6th, NOAA maintained its outlook for below normal Atlantic activity. The agency forecasts 7 to 13 named storms for the full season, with 2 to 6 hurricanes and 0 to 2 major hurricanes. It puts the chance of below normal activity at 75%, with a 20% chance of near normal activity and a 5% chance of above normal activity. NOAA says strengthening El Niño is a major reason. The pattern can increase wind shear over the Atlantic, making it harder for tropical systems to organize or intensify. But that is a basin-wide seasonal outlook, not a landfall forecast. NOAA explicitly states that landfalls depend largely on shorter-term weather patterns and are only predictable within about a week of a potential impact. That warning matters. A lower seasonal total does not mean that a single storm cannot bring severe rain, tornadoes, storm surge, or flooding to a community. NOAA points to inland rainfall as a major source of damage from tropical systems. Preparation should be based on the official forecast and hazard guidance for a location, not on a headline about whether the season is expected to be busy or quiet overall. The same climate pattern can push risks in different directions. While El Niño can suppress activity in the Atlantic through stronger wind shear, NOAA says it can support tropical development in the eastern and central Pacific. The August update left NOAA's Eastern Pacific outlook at 15 to 22 named storms, an above-average range. The Central Pacific outlook was also above normal. That contrast is a useful reminder that hurricane season is not one single forecast. Each ocean basin has its own background conditions, wind patterns, sea surface temperatures, and short-term weather signals. A community should follow the National Hurricane Center and local weather offices for the basin and coastline that affect it. For the public, the practical conclusion is straightforward. Do not import an Atlantic seasonal headline into a Pacific forecast, and do not treat a Pacific outlook as a prediction for an individual island, state, or coastal city. The official outlooks describe the background odds. Individual systems require individual forecasts. That distinction is critical for households and local officials. Seasonal climate information is valuable because it gives governments, emergency managers, growers, utilities, and communities time to review plans. It is not a replacement for daily forecasts, evacuation instructions, or local emergency alerts. NOAA's hurricane update stresses that even tropical storms that never reach hurricane strength can produce destructive rainfall. The agency's emphasis on preparation remains in place throughout the season. The right takeaway is not fear, and it is not dismissal. It is to use the correct level of information for the decision at hand. For a months-ahead planning question, seasonal outlooks are useful. For a storm expected this week, official local forecasts and alerts are decisive. If a watch or warning is issued, people should consult the responsible local emergency authorities and the National Weather Service, not social media rumor or a seasonal probability chart. In this report, the core point is simple. Climate patterns can tilt the odds. They do not erase the need to track real-time hazards. The World Meteorological Organization sees a wider seasonal picture. In its July 31st update, the agency said a strong El Niño was developing and expected to strengthen during August through October. WMO also said a positive Indian Ocean dipole was expected to develop, adding another factor that can shape regional rainfall and temperature patterns. The organization's global seasonal outlook shows where the chance of above normal, near normal, or below normal seasonal conditions is highest. WMO stresses that these are probabilities, not certainties. The agency says El Niño effects vary with intensity, timing, duration, and other climate patterns. Even within one region, the impact can differ. That is a point worth repeating, because climate maps can look more precise than they are. They are valuable planning tools, but they do not replace on-the-ground forecasts. Their strength is showing broader risk patterns early enough for institutions to prepare, communicate, and update response plans as new data arrives. The next useful update is not a viral forecast. It is the next official data update. NOAA's Climate Prediction Center issues its ENSO diagnostic discussion monthly, and its weather agencies update tropical outlooks and local forecasts as conditions change. The National Hurricane Center provides short-range tropical outlooks, watches, warnings, and track forecasts when a system is active. For the coming months, viewers should separate 3 layers of information. First, there is the seasonal climate outlook, the broad odds associated with a strengthening El Niño. Second, there are basin-level hurricane outlooks, Atlantic, Eastern Pacific, and Central Pacific forecasts that may point in different directions. Third, there are immediate hazard products, local forecasts, and official alerts for actual weather threats. This approach keeps the facts in proportion. NOAA's August discussion is a meaningful update. WMO's global outlook adds context, but neither authorizes a prediction that one storm, one flood, one drought, or one winter outcome is inevitable. The data says the background climate signal is getting stronger. The local details will emerge through later forecasts.
The headline is not that one event is inevitable. It is that the climate odds are changing, and official forecasts should guide the next decisions. We will keep tracking the NOAA and WMO updates as new data arrives. For TrendProof, I'm your host. Thanks for watching.